Welcome to Wildside, your wild true crime podcast.
We're your hosts, who are sisters, storytellers, and truth seekers.
I'm Bailey, a therapist who is fascinated by all weird and dark human behaviors.
And I'm Chelsea, an educator here to unearth the facts behind the cases.
We cover true crime because some cases are just too dark to forget,
and others are too wild to ignore.
We're so glad you're here, so buckle up
and enjoy the ride.
Hello.
Hey guys.
What's up? We just want to, I want to start off by saying I'm sorry that we haven't released the interview yet. It is what it is. It happens every once in a blue moon. 95% of the time, we send the episodes back to our interviewees. They just say, yeah, cool, no problem. In this case, they said, hey, there's a couple of things that we want to kind of tweak. And they're super busy. I mean, they're running full programs and I don't want to just blow them up. So I am sorry that we don't have the interview with Dr. Ram right now, but hopefully in the next couple of days we'll get it. I'll probably, rough up the courage in the next day to send him a follow-up email that says, hey, we really want to release this interview. So if you could just, give that to us. So give us the green light. I mean, again, I think legally and technically we could release it. But it's just not good practice. You know what I mean? It's just not good practice to say, well, screw that. We're going to just release it because we want to. And, screw what you guys say. So hopefully you guys can just, give us the benefit of the doubt. Be patient with us because it's frustrating for us because we want to give that to you. So we apologize about the delay in that.
Yeah. But in the meantime, we'll fill your evenings or mornings or whenever you're listening with a nice little short side, a little goodie.
Yay, a little goodie bag. We haven't done a short side in a kind of a hot minute. And today, you guys, we are doing the still very serious, this isn't a super lighthearted one, but we are doing the very serious concept of deathbed confessions.
Yeah, that's an interesting phenomena, if you ask me. I mean, it makes sense, right? But still interesting.
Yeah. So per regular short sides, I mean, these could potentially be full-length cases, but we're going to make them kind of short and sweet and to the point. And so the first case that we're going to cover, I'm actually going to jump in, and we are going to cover the case of James Washington. And if you thought you knew, you don't. So a deathbed confession is, by definition, a last-moment reveal made when someone believes that they're facing their final moments. There's a lot of debate over what drives deathbed confessions. Some say it's guilt, regret, or just a primal need for redemption or forgiveness. Sometimes it's meant to clear one's conscience, and sometimes it's a mistaken belief that death will protect them from the legal consequences of their actions. And sometimes these confessions reopen old cases, giving long-waiting families some answers. And that's where our stories begin today. Now, I think we all know that law enforcement isn't able to solve every crime. Some cases just go cold. They just stall. Maybe there isn't enough evidence, and maybe the suspect slips away, or maybe it's just one of those brutal crimes where everything seems to vanish just into thin air, where those cases grow cold and families are left to wait and wait and wait. Every now and then, though, there's a break. Some unexpected piece of evidence, a new witness, or even, you guessed it, a deathbed confession. And that's exactly what happened in Nashville, Tennessee, in a case that had been unsolved for almost 20 years. So let's rewind way back to 1995, where we were graced with Coolio's Gangster's Paradise, Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill, and O.J. Simpson's trial in California was front and center in every TV in America.
If the glove don't fit, you gotta quit.
You must have quit. Did you ever watch that O.J. Simpson episode? Like the documentary?
I didn't watch the documentary, but I was 10 when, or I guess 11, 10, 11. And I remember watching all of it on the news.
Yeah. So it's Cap. I mean, it's just wild. Yeah, you guys have to watch that documentary. It's just insane. So yeah, we are back in the 90s, mid 90s, and in this case, we are across the country in Nashville, Tennessee, where firefighters were responding to smoke billowing out of an abandoned house. When they went inside, they found just the most horrific scene. The body of a woman who had been stabbed in the neck, bludgeoned with a cinder block, rolled in a rug, and set on fire. Her skull had been fractured in multiple places, her cheekbone crushed, and her nose bone flattened by blunt force. It was just gruesome. After an autopsy and running some identification, the body turned out to be that of 35-year-old Joyce Goodner. She had met a horrible fate, but again, an autopsy was able to tell that she had died before being set on fire. I mean, luckily. There was cocaine found in her bloodstream, but there was no other evidence. There was no DNA evidence. You know, and this is the 90s. They didn't have the technology and the evidence to find, you know, like touch DNA or any of that. So there was no DNA, and there was just no smoking gun. There were suspects and a good solid prime suspect, but nothing solid to hold anybody on, so Joyce's case went cold. Now, I want to fast forward 17 years to 2009. A man by the name of James Washington was in prison, serving 15 years for the attempted second-degree murder of his girlfriend. Like a real winner. While locked up, he suffered a series of seizures in what everybody thought and presumed was a heart attack, and he was on the brink of death. He thought he was dying. On his way to the hospital, barely able to speak, James told an officer, "Officer, I want to confess something to you." And Officer Carey asked, "Well, what do you want to confess? What are you in for now?" And Washington said, "No, sir, I want to confess about killing a girl." So Officer Carey said, "You did?" And James was like, "Yep, I feel I need to confess." So the officer said, "Well, who was she?" And James Washington said, "Joyce somebody, Joyce Goodner or Goodman." And all he could remember is that it was near Ashland City around 1991. So with that, Officer Carey and Officer James Tomlinson took this straight to their supervisor, and James Washington then prepared to die. But what actually happened was that the doctors at the infirmary were able to stabilize James, and soon he realized that he was not dying at all. And after he realized this, he had a whole what had happened was kind of moment.
I was literally just Googling while you were telling me the story. That was my thought, and that was my Google search of how many people confess because they think they are on their deathbed. And then, surprise, surprise, they're in fact doing just fine.
It's like a panic attack. It's not a heart attack, sir.
You're doing all right there, bub.
Yeah. So he was just like, whoa. What I meant to say was I didn't kill anybody, and her name was definitely not Joyce. And it was definitely not in Ashland City, and it was definitely not in the early to mid 90s. You know what I mean?
Man, try to take a foot out of that mouth.
Yeah, he tried to uncook the crow he was eating. So he was just like, well, hold on. The reason I said this was because I was hallucinating. The medicine that y'all gave me made me delusional, and I didn't mean it. But luckily, nobody was buying it, especially the prosecutors, right? Now, initially, James Washington assumed, now this was the grave error, is he assumed he was safe due to the statute of limitations for murder. Chelsea's face is like, what? Excuse me?
I'm like, it was only a hot 4 years earlier. It's not like it was 74 years ago. Like, come on, friend.
17 years.
Oh, I thought you... Sorry, I thought you said it was in 91 and this happened in 1995. I got my dates mixed up.
That is
I
all
mean, yeah,
correct.
17.
This was 17 years later that he's almost dying and he's confessing to this.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, I mean, 17. I might be thinking, I mean, yeah, feels like a long time, right?
Yeah. So he was like, oh, yeah, well, no big deal because there's statute of limitations on murder. Because, you know, it was 17 years ago, I'm good. But the thing is, you guys, in Tennessee, like most states, serious crimes like murder have no statute of limitations. So prosecutors were like, "Nerd," and they pressed forward with the investigation. So it would be several years for investigators to finally obtain enough evidence to bring good old James Washington to trial for the murder of Joyce Goodner. In 2012, during the trial, Washington's defense team tried to argue once again that the confession wasn't reliable. He was drugged, he was confused, he was hallucinating. Now, while confessions made at the end of life can be admissible in court under the literal deathbed confessions idea, they're also vulnerable to questions, right? So was this person lucid? Were they legitimately hallucinating? Were they under the influence? And that's what Washington's defense team was arguing. He had a heart attack, he had seizures, the fear, the drugs, it was like a bad LSD trip for him, right? Maybe he believed he was dying, but does that make what he said automatically true? The law says it can, under certain conditions, and luckily in this case, it was in fact enough to prosecute. But despite the defense's claims of hallucination and all of this other stuff, the prosecution countered with the brutal details of Joyce's murder. Evidence that Washington had known her personally and the fact that investigators had always suspected him. So remember when we talked about a primary suspect in the beginning, it was James Washington from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the deal. I get it. If you are on your deathbed, quote unquote, and you're like, I killed JFK. I killed Elvis. I killed Santa Claus. I mean, I get it, right? Like, that's where it's like, I mean, you were maybe under distress, but if you were like, I literally killed a friend that I hung out with 17 years ago in the exact location,
right,
at the exact time frame that this person went missing, you know what I mean? Like, friend, sorry, that's gonna hold up.
I mean, I have seen people in active hallucination, and it's usually like, you know, the Pope's in my vagina kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. I have not. Lucas had a lady who, it's interesting. She had somebody in her vagina as well. It was, I think, Obama.
Oh, yeah.
And she would like lift up her dress, you know, and obviously we're not making fun of people who are having hallucinations, but we're saying that to say they're usually, what's the word I'm looking for? Pretty,
like, not based in reality.
Yes, pretty avant-garde, if you will. Like,
I mean,
pretty
out. Absolutely have people who struggle with hallucinations and schizophrenia and whatnot, and it's a lot of like paranoia and very real-based stuff and conspiracy theories, and FBI's following them and stuff like that. But to make the point of what we're trying to say, it's, yeah, homeboy might have been hallucinating if he was like, Santa, you know, I killed Santa Claus and, you know, threw all the elves off a cliff and fed them to alligators. Then it was like, oh, this woman with this name that actually matches a real person in the same area in the same timeline, right?
Yeah.
So basically, regardless of all of that, the prosecution was like, his words basically filled in the gaps that they didn't have as proof before. So after a 3-day trial in 2012, James Washington was convicted of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison, at least 51 years. Now, the irony here is, and I'm not an advocate for this, I'm just pointing out the irony. If he'd kept quiet and never made his confession, he would have finished his time for the attempted murder charge of his ex-girlfriend and walked free at some point. But in trying to arguably clear his conscience on what he thought was his deathbed, he kind of sealed his own fate.
I feel like this is where that idiom, no good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah.
I feel like it's an appropriate one for that.
Yeah. So it's safe to say that death makes people confront truths they've buried. It can strip away denial. And for James Washington, maybe he wanted forgiveness, maybe from his higher power, maybe from himself. I don't know. But he misunderstood both the law and the consequences of unburdening that guilt. In psychology, we talk about mortality salience, the awareness of death that forces people to act differently. And for James Washington, that awareness triggered a deathbed confession. But confession is a double-edged sword, right? It gave him a life sentence, but the good thing about this is it finally gave Joyce's family a little bit of justice.
Well, in the words of Key and Peele, I would say, you done messed up, A.A. Ron.
Yep. You done messed up, A.A. Ron. D nice. Present.
It would be interesting. I wish we could have a follow-up. I don't know if he's still alive, but I would like to have a follow-up with old Mr. Washington and see if he regrets confessing, or if he, in a weird way, is like, you know what? I've been holding that inside for all these years, and even though I'm still in jail, I feel freer than I have ever felt.
I don't know. I mean, yeah. I would love to hear that perspective, but maybe I'm a little bit cynical. But I just kind of have the general view that they do it to, I mean, maybe they do it to, like, you know, confession and to unleash some of that burden. But I think maybe some of it's kind of like, it's a power move. I'm going to be able to confess to this, and nothing's going to happen to me because of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point.
But
the world may never know.
May never know. So tag Chelsea, you're it.
Well, we're going from my third favorite era in life, the mid-90s, to my probably second favorite era, which is the year 2000, the Y2K.
Like literally on the dot 2000?
Yeah, on the dot 2000. I mean, not January 1st, but yes,
Sure.
The year 2000.
I remember that the end of the world was so imminent. I remember sitting with my friend Amy at her house, watching the clock together in her mom's room. We were like on her knees watching like one of those, like those old school clocks that like every parent or grandparent has in their room.
Like the red alarm clock, like the red letters, like
yes,
LED.
The dialogue, not the dialogue, the analog, is that what it's called?
Oh.
Anyways, watching that clock and just waiting for the world to crumble. And we were so scared. And then it turned to like 12:01 and like nothing happened. And I was like,
Well, that's weird because I don't remember you being at Amy's. I thought you were with Mom and Dad and me because we were at the beach there in Mississippi. We went down like, a couple of steps down to the coast, and we stood on the coast because we could see all of the casinos lined up, because part of the Y2K was that the entire power grid was going to shut down. And Dad was like, well, if the entire power grid shuts down, then all of the lights will shut down and we'll see it all just like, collapse. Which there are lots of thoughts to this. Like, if it is all going to go to heck, like, why are we out in the open? Why are we in the exposed wilderness of the new, apocalyptic world? But I just remember Dad, like, almost like Chevy Chase and
National
Lampoon's Vacation. And it's like at the Grand Canyon where he watches it. It turns 12:01. All the lights are still on. Everybody's still alive. And Dad was just like, all right, Yeah. Y'all
Wild.
ready to go home? So
Yeah.
that's crazy that you were at Amy's and
Yeah. Now that's
I
what my
was on.
memory serves. Maybe I wasn't, but that's like a core memory for me. But anyways,
Yeah.
okay, back to you. This is the year 2000.
It was on August 8th, 2000. And a woman by the name of Susan Carter and her daughter Alex vanished from their home in Beckley, West Virginia, which is just this really small community in Raleigh County, right? And Susan was 41. And she had been trying to build a new life for herself and her daughter Alex after a divorce. And Alex was, at the time, only 10 years old. Alex was, of course, just that really sweet age of being bright and lively. And, if we could all be 10 years old forever, I think the world would be a happier place, right? She's in that weird childhood adolescence. So at the time, Susan was locked in a custody dispute with Alex's biological father, and his name is Rick Lafferty. Okay, so we have Susan Carter and Alex Lafferty, and then dad/ex-husband Rick Lafferty. So Alex, the daughter, had recently moved in with her mother and stepfather. Susan had remarried, and then all of a sudden, they're gone. Like, completely gone. No trace, no goodbyes, no bodies, no phone calls, no letters. Nobody has seen them. They are literally gone.
And all arrows point to good old Rick Lafferty, right? Because
I mean, of course. Why would it not?
right.
And that is always a weird thing. It's an awful feeling. It's kind of like me coming home last night and opening my refrigerator thinking I was going to have the rest of my tres leche cake, and it was gone without a trace.
Yeah.
Except we knew who did that one. That was my son, because he's a jerk. So the investigators launched a search, and it quickly spiraled into this really webby, sticky confusion. And again, there was no solid evidence, and speculation early on turned to the thoughts that Susan might have abducted Alex and fled. But there was really nothing, no clear evidence, and the case just ended up kind of losing steam. Now, of course, for Rick Lafferty, the father and ex-husband, it was torment. His daughter was missing, his ex-wife is gone, and there's no evidence. There are no leads, there's nothing.
This is going to sound really callous and maybe a super unpopular opinion, and I don't want to sound super morbid, but I've talked with my husband, with Zach, before, and I, posed questions and was like, call me crazy, but I think I would rather my daughter lose a life than vanish and me not know. You know what I mean? Like, I think both are absolutely horrific, and it's not to say that, one is worse than the other necessarily, but the idea of not knowing what happened to your kid for more than 35 seconds, I can't even imagine what that's like day in and day out.
Yeah, I don't know. That would be an interesting poll. Obviously an insensitive one that we wouldn't do, but I don't know. Do you live in hope, even though it's been years and years? I don't know. Is there that shred of hope if they're quote missing? So in this case, it was years and years. In fact, it was 2 decades of nothing. So you fast forward to just a couple of years ago in 2021, and the FBI and local law enforcement refused to let the case fade away. And can we just say, I really do appreciate those people who go back through these cold cases.
Oh, sure, for sure.
And
100%.
bring new eyes to them, breathe new life into these cases. I do appreciate those people who are passionate about doing this. So at a press conference, the FBI unit that's in Pittsburgh, the Beckley Police, and the West Virginia State Police, along with U.S. Marshals, announced a renewed initiative. They offered a $10,000 reward for information, and then they also provided and age-progressed photos from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, showing what Alex might look like as an adult. Because remember, at the time, she was only 10.
Only 10, yeah.
Right. So Special Agent Mike Nordwall told the public, even though it's been 21 years, this case is not sitting on a shelf. I want Alex's family and the community to know we are focused on getting answers in this case and following every lead. The cool thing that happened next is we started getting, in West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, all the surrounding states, billboards were going up. I mean, they really, really were pushing to see if they could find some answers. And the message was clear that the Carters were not forgotten. And for Rick Lafferty, Alex's father, unfortunately, it was just really another painful reminder. But it was also, in the same breath, this glimpse of hope, if you will.
Right.
And he would later tell reporters that, he really never gave up that hope. And he actually said to just don't give up, right? Like, how do you feel in these situations? And he was like, just don't give up. You just keep on to that little shred of hope. Now, it wouldn't be long before investigators were actually hot on a trail. I mean, miraculously, all of this work, all of this money and this initiative that they pushed was actually working. In 2022 and 2023, search warrants were executed at a man by the name of Larry Webb. Okay, or more specifically, at a property or a business called Larry Webb's Property. Well, who's Larry Webb? Of course. Do you want to take a guess who Larry Webb is?
Some creepy next door neighbor.
Well, Bailey, we have to remember, Susan was remarried. Larry Webb was Susan's husband at the time and Alex's stepfather.
Ugh, whack.
Yeah. From the search warrant in what had once been Alex's bedroom, detectives discovered a bullet lodged in the wall. And not only did they find a bullet, but they found a bullet carrying traces of blood. Technology had advanced, and in that blood, of course, is DNA. And the DNA confirmed it belonged to Alex Carter.
Oh, poor baby.
It was the first concrete link tying Larry Webb, the stepfather, to the crime.
So, okay, but what is this? I mean, was he dying? Did he confess all this when he's dying?
Well, you have to get the backstory before you get to the point. And if anybody knows me, you have to talk a whole bunch about nothing. And then all of a sudden you're at the point, right? So by October 2023, a grand jury indicted Webb for Alex's murder. Even though the bodies of Susan and Alex had not been located, it would be over a year when Webb was being held at the Mount Olive Correctional Complex, and in April of 2024, when he suffered a medical episode and was rushed to Montgomery General Hospital. So in his weak and perceivably dying state, Webb told investigators the truth that he carried for 24 years. He and Susan had argued over missing money, and in a fit of rage, he shot her. 10-year-old Alex had witnessed the killing. Webb confessed that he shot her too, to silence her as a witness.
Oh, gosh.
Right? He wrapped both bodies in bed linens and left them in the basement for 2 days while he dug shallow graves in the backyard. Then he buried them, stepped away from the house they lived in just hours after giving his deathbed confession, Webb did pass away. So, investigators that are now armed with Webb's confession wasted no time. The next day, they searched the backyard of Webb's former home in Beckley, and there they were, the remains of Susan Carter and Natasha Alex Carter.
Oh, they had been there the whole time?
The whole time.
We didn't need a deathbed confession for this, guys.
I know. And I always am like, how did you miss a bullet lodged into a wall in that house?
I mean,
I don't know, right? Like, there's so many questions. So, after 24 years of anguish, the missing mother and daughter were finally found. Raleigh County prosecutor Benjamin Hatfield described it as a bit of a poetic ending that not even I could write. For more than 2 decades, Susan and Alex's family lived in limbo. Holidays and milestones passed with no closure. Theories and rumors swirled. The early missteps by investigators only deepened that wound. For Alex's father, Rick, the confession, understandably, it was double-edged, right? It was devastating on one hand, but then it was also a relief, because at least he did have closure and know.
Well, yeah.
The worst was confirmed. His daughter had been murdered, not abducted, but at least he finally knew what happened. But Webb's confession, given with nothing left to lose, changed everything. It shows how the conscience of a dying man can succeed where forensics, police work, and time ultimately failed. And for Susan and Alex Carter, justice didn't come through a trial or a prison sentence. It came through a dying man's words and the backyard graves he could no longer hide. After 24 years, the mystery of their disappearance ended not with an investigation, but with a confession whispered at the edge of death. And for their family, though the pain never disappeared, the not knowing finally did.
Oh, I gotta say, I don't want this taken the wrong way, but kudos to that man for giving up where the bodies are, because how many documentaries have we seen of serial killers and people who are just they're like, nope, I will take that with me. And these poor victims and their families never know, because they're never found. And that infuriates me.
Oh, I know.
I hope everybody has a deathbed confession. You know what I mean? If it solves some questions, or
it's appropriate, if you will. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I was thinking of that as well. And I never want to feel or suggest that there's a hierarchy to bad behavior, but I feel like it seems to me that, this situation with Larry Webb, even though it's not excusable, it probably really was a crime of passion, right? Like, it really was probably a mistake. I'm not saying it was or it wasn't, but what I'm saying is it seems to me that people who confess, there is some sort of remorse, whereas our true psychopaths and sociopaths, right? It's kind of like, screw you guys. They can all suffer. I don't care. I'm not going to give y'all anything.
I don't know. Maybe. And I think it's a beautiful characteristic of you and your heart to think that way. But I just am a little bit more calloused, I think, than you are with that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it takes two, right? We need lots of personality.
It takes two.
Yeah, deathbed confessions are wild. I don't know, but I don't know. I'm fascinated by them. I'm glad that some good came out of both of our cases.
Yeah. And I'm so sorry we don't have that interview out for you guys, but we'll get it out soon. But on another note, we got to interview, and this is going to be dropping a little bit later, we got to interview the real life woman behind the Mind Hunters show.
Yeah.
The psychologist, Dr. Dorothy, was it? Dorothy? Can't remember her name of the show now. But basically, the real life woman who inspired that character, we got to interview her, and I'm super stoked about it.
Yeah.
Dr. Carr.
Yeah. It's kind of wild. Man, especially, like I said, I mean, I think most of y'all know that I really am. The older I get, the more I become such a history buff, and thinking about just like the whole women's rights movement and women pioneering in fields that no one ever thought they would be in, and then being asked. I mean, it's just crazy, right? Like, it was just such an honor to interview somebody like Dr. Ann.
Yeah. So we'll get that out to you guys. We've got a couple interviews starting to stack up. People are busy. This is a busy time of year, so we're doing our best. I have been having thoughts of moving interviews to once a month instead of twice a month because it's so much.
Yeah.
You guys don't understand how much goes into getting this stuff set up and edited and working full time. It's just kind of insane.
Yeah.
But we'll kind of think that through for a little bit. But as always, you guys, thanks for hanging out with us through this wild and crazy short side of a ride.
Yeah. And as always, we'll catch you on the wild side.
Bye, guys.
Later, Gators.
Hey, Wildside Tribe, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Wildside Podcast. Make sure to tune in on Wildside Wednesdays. New episodes will drop each Wednesday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We would love to hear from you, so if you have a wild case recommendation, email us at wildsidepodcast@gmail.com. That's Wildside with a C. Or share your thoughts in the comments below. As always, if you haven't heard it today, you're loved, you're worthy, and you're valuable. And we'll catch you on the flip side.